Okay, we will get started. Hello, I'm Mary Jones. I serve as chair for the Kansas Behavioral Science Regulatory Board. I ask the members of the board to respond to a roll call to signify their presence at the open meeting that is being conducted remotely by conference call and other electronic media. Dave Anderson.
Present.
Donna Horner-Fall.
Present.
I see her. Did I? Yeah. Okay.
Present.
Okay. Jim Kilmartin.
Present.
We're not hearing that.
Did you
We
hear
are
me?
fixing some audio. We can, I can see you. I can see you moving your lips. Let me finish. Yeah. Okay, Jim, can you say that again?
I'm here.
Perfect. Kathleen Lightcap,
Here.
Richard Nobles,
Present.
Donna Norton. Steve Johnson.
Here.
Andrea Pedromo Morales, Cynthia Schindel,
Here.
Laura Shaughnessy,
Here.
Steele,
Here.
Deb Stidham. Here. I note the following staff members are also present: David Fye,
Here.
Leslie Allen,
Here.
and Assistant Attorney General Lainey Bernard is also present. Next, David Fye will read a message concerning this meeting being held remotely.
This is David Fye, Executive Director for the Kansas Behavioral Sciences Regulatory Board. Public comment allows the public to address the board about its concerns, but the Kansas Open Meeting Act, or KOMA, does not require the board to provide public comment or answer questions from individuals. Individuals requesting to provide public comment can contact the Executive Director prior to the meeting by sending an email to david.fye@ks.gov. There will be no public comment at this meeting to ensure the board has sufficient time to discuss the items on the agenda. Because we are conducting this public meeting remotely by conference call and other teleconference ability, I state for the record the following information. Access to this meeting is being conducted by a medium of interactive communication that allows members of the public without cost to attend the meeting through the use of the conference call and on the board's YouTube channel. While the meeting is conducted remotely, the requirements of KOMA are not suspended. As such, we will be conducting this meeting pursuant to the KOMA. On November 21st, 2022, we sent notice of the board meeting to all individuals who had requested notice of the board meetings. The notice was also posted on the board's website, ksbsrb.ks.gov. You may obtain a copy of the notice at that website. An agenda and other meeting material was posted to the board's website on the day of the meeting. You may also request a copy of the agenda by sending an email to david.fye@ks.gov, subject line request for the agenda, and it will be sent to you. The notice contains information for the conference call and YouTube channel that allows members of the public to attend the meeting free of charge. The notice also states that if there are any technical issues during the meeting, you may send an email to BSRB@ks.gov. A recording of the meeting will be available on the BSRB YouTube channel following the conclusion of the meeting by using the link to the meeting on the agenda.
Thank you, David. Thank you, board, for being available on a short-term basis so we can cover a fairly short agenda. Our first item is looking at the agenda approval. We have really one item on the agenda today, which is discussion on board legal services. And David sent notice to all the board that we had received notification of cancellation of our attorney's agreement with the AG's office. I have come prepared today to ask for a motion to get some short-term interim attorney help. David, is there anything you want to say regarding that?
Just that the letter that you referenced, it did come through on November 16th. It was from Dennis DePew, Deputy Attorney General in Civil Litigation. And like you mentioned, it did say at the conclusion of December 31st, 2022, they would be terminating legal services.
Okay. Because of the short notice and the kind of urgent circumstances around that, the vice chair and Deb Stidham and I talked about a short-term interim legal counsel. And we have discussed with Steve Kearney about his ability to provide some short-term interim counsel for us. This is not a long-term agreement, but just like I talked about the agreement that he sent to us, the services would include perhaps further investigation into the cause of the cancellation, including meetings with BSRB's board and staff, the Attorney General's office, and other as agreed, as well as guidance regarding next steps to resolve the matter in the best interest of BSRB and its constituents. Any questions so far?
Have we heard any reason for this cancellation?
Go ahead.
I've reached out to Mr. Depew, and when I received the message, it was very surprising to me. We had not received anything from Mr. Depew or anyone concerning their contract since we had discussions back in late July, early August. I had talked with the board chair, Mary Jones, and requested to set up a meeting with Mr. Depew to discuss the termination of the contract and any possible reasons for their decision on that. But they did not want to meet to discuss those items. And so I had asked for that meeting, but we have not received anything additional from Mr. Depew concerning the reason why they are terminating the contract.
Does the contract allow for them to terminate with no reason given at any time?
So the contract does state in section 10 that either party could terminate the agreement as long as they provided 30 days notice. And so since they provided notice on November 16th, that it would be terminating after essentially December 31st, that was over 30 days notice based on the language in the contract.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, David. Steve's contract for legal services are at a rate of $250 per hour. A couple of other folks in his office, Abraham, one would be $175, and the law clerk would be $75 per hour. I have requested a cap for these services, so nothing to exceed $5,000. Just again, this is a really seen as a bridge contract to take care of matters that may seem urgent and so we can find ongoing legal counsel. What I would ask of the board today is a delegation motion to delegate the authority to me to sign this contract on behalf of BSRB to execute those services so that our needs are met in this interim timeframe.
So moved.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Second.
Thank you, Laura, as a second. Any discussion?
Just a question. Can you tell me how the budget that you've allotted meets our current budget?
Sure. So there is an approved budget for the agency over the course of the year, which is roughly around $1 million. Now we indicate our planned expenditures when we submit our budget. The budget was approved by last year's legislature. But within that budget, we do have flexibility in terms of how we do actual expenditures based on, moving projects and different things like that. So this would not be a significant impact in terms of our budgetary process to go ahead and approve a contract of this size. We did have a certain amount budgeted for the Attorney General's office for their contract. We had previously requested an amount that had been approved by the legislature of $75,000, and we had submitted a request for additional authority for the $12,200 increase that the Office of the Attorney General had provided to us. That is pending with the legislature currently, but based on other expenditures that we have budgeted, we could move some planned expenditures to allow for this contract for the services.
So if I heard correctly, then this contract that we are discussing temporary approval of or approval of for a temporary time is capped at $5,000 per month?
No, $5,000 in total without another approval of the board. It should be good into a situation where things go longer, trying to find long-term attorney services, and we need to extend. They would have to be upon approval of BSRB. So not
Okay. But and any additional long-term contract would have to go through the contracting office. Is that correct? I mean, the state has a contracting office that puts out bids and whatnot. So
I have had some conversation with Council Laney, and Lee, do you want to speak to that?
I don't. I think what we discussed is data, that's a procurement question that you'd have to go with the Office of Procurement about, and whether that's something that needs to go through that policy or not, or that procedure. So just something you need to check procurement, but the number I always hear is in excess of $5,000. Rule of thumb is go through procurement, but I don't know if that's a surplus, the class of service contract, or the procurement.
Okay, so that's something David would follow up with the Office of Procurement.
So this $5,000 capped short-term contract is intended to bridge the time until we can get a more permanent arrangement.
Yes.
Okay.
And just to clarify too, so the message we received from the Attorney General's office was that legal services would terminate at the end of December 31st, 2022. So they will be providing some legal services to the board through the end of this calendar year. So we will still get some services. The message they sent to us, they said that they would not be beginning anything new, that they wouldn't be able to finish within that time period, but we would still be receiving some services from their office through the end of this calendar year.
It might be helpful to also refresh the memory that the state fiscal year is different from the calendar year, and that we're not responsible for the second half of the payment. So we do have that kind of in.
Right, yeah, so the fiscal year for the state begins on July 1st and it runs through June 30th. And the contract of the Attorney General's office was $87,200 to be split into two payments. The first payment was due in September of this year, and that was paid. And then the second payment was scheduled to be paid in January of 2023. And they indicated that since they would be terminating legal services, we would not need to make that second payment, the one for January of 2023.
Last question I have is if this does need to be bid out, and it probably will through the Office of Contracts, is the ceiling you've set for yourselves at 5,000 enough in order to get through the process? I don't know that it's if it's possible, we don't need to bring the board back again. If we're on track and we're on process, it just takes longer than what we think sometimes, and we have the holidays.
Yeah, Jim, that's why we say without needing to go back to full approval, because we still will have support from the AG's office for hearings, for things that are already scheduled. We do have that support. So, I can't answer that in full, but we wanted to make sure that we had a cap without coming back to the board for approval for more hours or time.
No, I'm suggesting you increase the cap from 5 to 10 so you can get the work done. Assume it takes a quarter, it takes 3 months to get this all through the process. I'm just asking the question whether or not we should increase the cap to allow you guys to get the job done.
Yeah, so I might be able to help out with that as far as the time frame. So the next board meeting is going to be the second Monday in January. So I should be able to talk to the Office of Procurement for that time period. There may be some, the limit with the $5,000. I'll ask them about and see if this applies to different things such as legal contracts, or there might be an exception for certain types of services. I'm not familiar a lot with the procurement process, but with that board meeting coming up so quickly in January, it would not reach too far into the next calendar year before the board could have some updated information.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Jim, I think it's a good point. And if the board wanted to go ahead and extend that cap, we could certainly entertain that today and change them.
Well, if we're gonna meet in 4 weeks, perhaps we could just put it on the agenda at that point. I don't want to. So I forgot all about the January 2 meeting. I'm just trying to make sure you have enough time.
I think we're good. Okay, I did have a motion from Cynthia and a second. I think Laura, is that correct? Discussion sounds like it was covered. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, thank you so much. That passes. The next, in also discussion of board legal services, we wanted to talk a little bit about the next steps. Clearly, David needs to contact the Office of Procurement and see what our next course of action will be. We wanted to entertain some discussion about what that might look like in terms of interviewing or helping David to select an attorney or attorney organization. So we had some discussion, thinking about maybe a small group of people who would want to participate in this. For those of you who remember, like the interview process for David's position, a small group of us worked on that. Are there any interested parties who would be interested in helping with that process? We're thinking just 2 or 3 people,
I would suggest probably an odd number.
3 people.
Good point.
I'd be willing to do that.
It could be a Dave. I certainly am willing to help out. Me too. Good.
I have the time to do it if needed.
And I also would help.
We have lots of helpers on there. Do we
I
need
want
to
to
do
limit
it?
it to 3.
I mean, it's a 3 or 5.
Yes.
We could do 5.
Okay. So we can do 5. I would then entertain a motion to delegate the interview process to a panel to help David find next attorney coverage of 5 people. Those will be Mary Jones, Dave Anderson, Deb Stidham, Cynthia, and Jim or Donna? Donna was the next one.
I'm fine with it, but if Jim would like to do it, that's fine too.
I'm fine with Donna doing it. I was just offering.
If Donna was next to speak up, we'll go with Donna. Is there a motion?
I would move to appoint those 5 people to assist David buying and finding a new legal service.
Thank you, Deb. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Cynthia. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much. Those were the discussion items for the agenda today. Is there any other business? If not, we will take a motion to adjourn. I'll second. All those in favor?
I
Aye.
Thank you all so much for being here today. Hope you had a nice holiday.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
You too.
Jim.